A few people after the session on Thursday asked the question of what is the general point or what is the objective of the lecture. So I just wanted to add this introductory slide so that to emphasize the what is the objective of what we are going to trying to do in the session. So generally speaking, one of the main objectives of this course is to learn how to connect to big data sources. So what is big data and why is it important for us to learn to connect to this data and work with it? Now, today's technology allow for a collection of various types of data in large quantities. Okay, so these various types in different formats and in large quantities, that's what big data refer to. Okay, so quantities, different types, various formats. Okay, so that's data sets with all these features. Now, we have the technology to collect the data, and we also have the technology to process the data and benefit from it. Now, when you collect this data, there's a quote that says data is the new oil. So that was to refer to how the data can be a raw material or a raw source that needs to be processed in order to extract valuable information out of it. Okay, so the collection of the data itself is not a problem anymore. We have the hard drives or the storage abilities and the collection abilities are available, and we are able to collect a lot of data. Now, we also have the ability to process this data. An example of this data, general example of this data would be social media data. And differently, this is a good example of for big data because they have millions and millions of data records about user interactions, about comments, about various activities that happen on social media. And it can be a very useful source for information. The very obvious example of the useful information that can come out of it is that you can make decisions about advertising and other decisions related to, say, social media usage and stuff like that. So we are using a general example like social media just because it is relevant and relatable to almost everybody, but definitely eventually when you progress in your learning in your engineering discipline, the same concepts apply. So now we are trying to work with social media data just as a general example, but the same concepts apply on, let's say, usage data of devices or usage data of electrical power grids, for example. So the same concept apply on engineering technical data, but for now we're just using a very generic example of data that we can work with, which is the social media data. Now, several companies collect the data and make it available as a service, given the fact that it can be it can be useful for businesses to build on. So the companies like Google, like other companies, have the resources to collect the data, and then they can sell it as a service. Okay, so now we are gonna learn how to connect to an example data source that provides the data to be accessible as a service, like the service available in GCP that allow access to YouTube data, which is called YoutubeDataAPI. Okay, so in this session, we will try to connect to a data source that is YouTube Data API and receive some data out of it, okay, or get some data out of it. Now, what are we gonna do with this data is something that we can talk about it later, but the main objective of this exercise is to learn how to connect to a big data source. Okay, so I hope that explanation can be helpful.